Okay. Hi, my name is Michael John Weber, and I'm here to talk to you about, as always, or as recently, about how to avoid writer's block. Yeah, and how to finish your friggin' novel. If you haven't. If you're having problems, I got ideas. So, what? It's, I don't know, Sunday, Vancouver Island, it's raining. You can probably hear the rain pattering, so I don't know if that bugs you. It makes me want to nap, to be honest with you. So, why am I here again? Today is to, again, address the idea, or the question, of Michael, where do you get your ideas? Again, I don't get a lot of comments or reviews or questions, etc. But of the random people that talk to me in my real life, that's one of them. Where do you get all your ideas? Especially when I tell them how far along I am now. Like, yeah, I'm writing book 9 of the series. They're like, well, where do you get all the ideas for all of that? That's ridiculous. But I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's rather easy. That's probably unfair of me to say. But anyways, that's what I'm trying to show by example here. And so, how am I going to do this? Alright, so in the back of every book I put a list of books, movies, TV shows, video games, anime, anything that in some way inspires me or gets me in the mood to write this stupid shit. It doesn't even matter if it's good or bad. It's whether or not it's in some way inspiring or putting me in the spirit of writing whatever the hell it is I'm writing. So, and I do that with every novel, seriously, and they're big lists, because I got a lot of free time, so to say, so I watch a lot of shit. Usually I'll play it in the background while I'm writing, just to get my brain in that same sort of mood, you know what I mean? I think I've said that before. If you're writing a vampire book, seriously, go put on the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, and just let it play in the background, and I'm not saying allow its ideas to filter through your brain into the keyboard, but it sort of puts you in the mood. Actually, the soundtrack is probably what will put you in the mood, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, so of the very few comments, questions, etc. I get, somebody asked me about the very first book in this ShyGod Project of mine, at that list at the end of movies and crap that inspired it. And on that list, I have the movie Club Dread. And I even put in brackets, it would take too long to explain why this is on the list. And so somebody asked me, Michael, why the fuck is Club Dread on the list? Could you please explain it to me? Now, it's not a short explanation, and I'm a long-winded motherfucker. So I'm going to try to keep it short. If you don't know what Club Dread is, Club Dread's a comedy movie from Broken Lizard. Broken Lizard's also done Super Troopers 1 and 2. And I think their first movie was called Puddle Cruiser, which I haven't seen. Anyway, sort of stoner comedy, but that might not be fair, but it's that sort of idea. Anyway, Club Dread's set on a tropical island. It's basically a riff on Friday the 13th, where someone in a mask and a machete goes around killing the camp counselors. Just the main difference is it's set on a tropical island for drunk single people and not children, and it's a comedy. So you're gonna get a bit of humor in there on top of machete killing. And that's the movie. And really, that was sort of the idea. The question was asked about, how do you go, Michael, from a mask-wearing, machete-wielding comedy movie set on a tropical island to the story you're writing, which is about, fairies and magic and demons and stupid shit like that, right? It's almost a non sequitur. How do you get from one to the other? So, and I say it is a very important movie to the inspiration of my story, and so that it is such a weird movie, I thought maybe I would explain it a little bit here. So one day I was I was walking around, daydreaming. That's kind of what I do, daydream. And for some reason I was singing a Club Dread, and for some reason I was like, well, I wonder what a prequel to Club Dread would look like. Which is stupid, it really is. You would never ever do this. No nobody would really put money into that. There's no need for it. It's not that the first one was so bad you would never remake it. It was just there's no need. Why would you do this? Club Dread Part 2 doesn't make sense. Especially a prequel. But I did think about it. So in Club Dread, this tropical island, this is Paradise Resort, if you will, is owned by a guy named Coconut Pete. He's sort of this aging island crooner. He just parties all the time and makes music. And that was really what caught me. It was such a fascinating character to me, played by Bill Paxton, by the way, who's quite awesome. Anyway, I was fascinated by that character for some reason. I just caught up into the prequel of it. And I'm like, if this guy's in his 40s or 50s when we're watching the movie, but he's been and he's owned this island for like most of his life, then that means, well, what was it like when he was 20? And how did he start this island of horny 20-somethings who get drunk and play sexual scavenger hunt with each other? How did he build this thing? And so in daydreaming that ridiculous prequel, why would you make this? So I'm like, okay, Coconut Petey's 24, he's making music, he's publishing albums, he's partying with his buddy, he's got fucking groupies, he's got a fucking entourage, every day is party all night, and you know what I mean? And he's got this sort of radically hedonistic lifestyle. And then one day he says to his buddy, we should buy a fucking tropical island. And his buddy's like, yeah, man. And then you time cut to them going to the tropical island. They wander around. They decide what should be there, what the customers would like. We need a pool. We need some cabanas. We need a hedge maze. We need a beach house. And they make it so. They hire staff. They get people coming. And I just kept rolling with this idea of how this random character built this tropical paradise that Club Dread is set on. And so I could go on. I got into sort of the traditions of that Club Dread place, and how they got started and how they're kept along, and how they fade from time or how their meaning changes. That's what I do. I tell stories, and I can't stop it once they start. Once the idea is in, prequel to Club Dread, my brain just keeps going until either I'm bored, distracted, or done. Maybe it is a problem. I don't know. But anyways. So then when I sat down to write the very first novel of this so-called ShyGod Project of mine, part of me wanted to... the first thing I did was I wrote the prequel. I needed to know how this world and these people got there and why. And I needed to show how it got established. So I started writing a prequel for my own work. I'm not going to explain how it ended up being used. That's for later, or was in another video maybe. But I really held in mind this daydream of a prequel to Club Dread. And so I almost followed it. I followed the step-by-step of my daydream of the Club Dread prequel. And I just translated and transliterated it into my own fucking fantasy world. So in my daydream, the Coconut Pete, the owner of this tropical island, and his best friend, I imagine them going to the island the very first day they get there. And they together wander around and decide what buildings should be there, what fun activities they would do, where the bar should be, etc. They plan it out. So in my own story, the main character and her best friend arrive at this island that's the setting in my world, and they go about sightseeing the place, deciding where buildings should be, where the fucking pool should be, where the beach house should be, etc., etc. Then in my daydream, I had, imagine what it would be like when the very first customer arrived to the Club Dread Paradise Island, and how that might go, how that might play out. That's an exciting thing, your first customer sort of deal. So then in my story, I said, okay, well, let's move that idea over. In my story, I should then maybe show a scene where we get the very first person arriving to that island, and how that goes, and how exciting that would be, or whatever. And I just kept doing that. I kept going from what I imagined a prequel of Club Dread to be. I took those elements, and I just moved them over, changed the nouns, and called it my story. So that turned in, that supposed prequel turned into my actual prequel, which then established the scene, the characters, the setting, the reason for being of the scenery, of the setting, of the plot, and all the rest of that. And that's how I got the idea for how to start writing this 8-book now project. Was a very ridiculous what if question. Being, what if there were a prequel to Club Dread? Now, again, it just comes back to ideas are everywhere, and you just have, the problem is execution. The idea is there, Club Dread is there, and asking the question, I wonder what a prequel would be like, that's just another idea lying around in the grass, so to say. I guess the trick is stumbling upon it, and then I guess the trick is to do all that work of being crazy enough to actually see the idea through to some logical conclusion. And then I don't know how I decided, hey, that would be a good prequel for my book. I have no idea. Maybe that's part of how art works too. So anyways, that is, and I actually tried to keep that extremely short because really I could talk a lot about how much thinking. It's actually now embarrassing. Yeah, how much I planned out the Club Dread prequel. But again, I did it all for my own sake. I would never put money into a Club Dread prequel. No offense to Broken Lizard. I enjoy their movies very immensely. But yeah, I don't see that ever making money. And I don't know why I do it. Like I said, I feel kind of embarrassed to say, yeah, I went pretty hard. I thought about that for a good hour or two. And I come up with a lot of stuff. And again, a lot of these bullshit ideas I came up with in that just hypothetical brainstorming scenario I ended up using. I'll give one more, but then I'll stop talking, I think. I noticed in Club Dread there are certain traditions. I mentioned that word tradition. One of them is they have a gorilla costume called Wilkie the Welcome Gorilla. That's what it's called. It's just ridiculous. It almost got cut out of the movie apparently, but whatever. Just for time. My point is, for some reason I daydreamed like one day a boat shows up to this tropical island the boat's full of customers with cash to burn and libidos to exercise, right? And one of the guys is named Wilkie. I don't know. He's like from New Jersey or somewhere. It doesn't even matter. Just somewhere random, right? Whatever sounds random, yeah. And he, for some reason, brought with him a gorilla costume. And on that first night of his arrival to the party island, he gets drunk as fucking fuck, puts on this costume, and starts running around welcoming people to the island, giving them giant sloppy furry hugs. And that was just my brainstorm. But then I was like, but logically then, after his stay, his 5 nights, his week, or whatever, he would leave, he'd sober up, and blurry-eyed, he'd get back on the boat and go home. But what if he left that costume? Or purposely or otherwise? Again, there come the what-ifs, right? What if he leaves his costume, his gorilla costume, on the island and fucks off and we never see him again? Well, then I thought, well, what if when the next boat of customers comes, the staff of this pleasure island is like, hey, we still got that fucking Wilkie costume. How about one of us put that on and we'll run around and welcome these new people to the pleasure island, giving them big fat sloppy furry hugs, and so they do so, and it's great, and everybody's like, yay, and there was much rejoicing, or what have you. And then that gets repeated continuously. New boat comes, gorilla. New boat comes, gorilla, etc., etc. And it becomes then a tradition. 5 years pass, they continue to do it. 10 years, 15, 20. Which is, I think, the point in the movie Club Dread. We're about 20 years into the life of this island, or thereabouts. I don't know. So then it becomes tradition. And so I thought about that in my own story. So maybe not to spoil it, and I'm not trying to talk about my own work, but I said, okay, well, what if there's some object in my story that's just one day they're like, huh, we could use an object like this, why don't we just create it? And they're like, sure, and it gets created. But then that object, whatever it may be, it stays in the storyline for years and years and years, and myth starts being told about it, gossip, rumor, false stories, actual stories, etc., etc. And then after centuries, what does that do to a story as time passes? If once 1,000 years passes, but that object's still there, the weight of legend and myth that it must possess would be Herculean. And then what about 10,000 years and 100,000 years? And that object just grows in power. So it got to a point where just a simple everyday object was endowed with so much importance by being made legend. And all of that, what I just said, that kind of sounds all godly and awesome, seeing as I sort of look like Thor. I'm not trying to brag. I'm nowhere near a beefcake, but this kind of makes me look like Thor. Need a hammer. Valhalla. See? Yeah, okay. But anyways, I got all this mystical bullshit from thinking about fucking Club Dread and the goddamn Wilkie the Wonder Gorilla costume. Right, but just not the costume itself and the silliness of it, but the idea of how objects become artifacts and how stories become legend or myth, etc., etc. So again, it is me bragging and talking about my own shit and listening to me talk because I like the sound of my own voice. But when it comes to Michael, help me out. Where do you get ideas? How do you process these ideas into storylines? How do you get this done? That's how I got it done. That's the very first book. That's the prequel for how my whole story started, is thanks to Club Dread. And me being able to go, I wonder, what if Club Dread, XYZ, blah, 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 right? So it's the two things. It's the movie's fault, Club Dread's fault for inspiring me, but then it's also, I guess, my fault. I should take some of the blame for being inspired and then doing something with it, applying it, if you will. But I mean, how ridiculous is that? I already did a video on the characters. Seriously, I'm inspired by my cat. I'm inspired by a little toy string doll I got at a gumball machine. And I'm inspired by a walking stick. And those are just simple objects laying around the house. Now I go throw on Club Dread and go on this weird brainstorm fucking daydream about a prequel. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous and crazy. But the end result is I have written over 1 million words in the last 3 years for this project. And it wouldn't be the same if I didn't do all that Club Dread watching and thinking. So, my point then, and I suppose my conclusion, because obviously I've been babbling a while now, my conclusion is, again, Michael, where do you get your ideas? The ideas are everywhere. Every movie, every book, every video game, every TV commercial, every conversation you have, every time you take the garbage out, there's going to be a story idea somewhere. It's just a matter of taking note of it, playing that what-if game. That seems to be important. Now that I'm talking more and more about it, it seems that what if this? What if E.T. was evil? What if, that's, you could just go on forever. And there are the nascent ideas of your storyline. So, I hope that's helpful. Really, on the surface of it, it's just me bragging. But again, I hope it really does illustrate how you can glean ideas from anything, and then with a certain amount of thought, persistence, elbow grease, I hate saying that, then you can get it done. You can shape that idea to your own story. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope that was fun for you. It was fun for me. Rah! Spreader. I should put... See, look, it's got right here. It's got that little port for the laser. You know that little laser beam that aims his fucking shoulder-mounted... Right? So I should get, like one of those lasers that you use to play with your cat or something from, like, the dollar store or whatever. And I should cut that little fucking hole out. and jam that bitch in there with some, I don't know, some super glue or whatever, and turn it on. Almost be like Locutus of Borg from Star Trek Next Generations. Yeah, I remember that. God, I'm old. Okay, now I'm just babbling. Alright, happy Halloween, kids. I'll see you whenever I see you.